Hello friends, today we're going to talk about dividing by a decimal. So when looking at this notes page at the very top, this little box here gives us our step-by-step process on how to divide by a decimal. Number 1 says in order to make the divisor a whole number, multiply it by a power of 10. Now your divisor is the number that's outside of your division box. So that's the number that you're dividing by, okay? Multiplying by a power of 10 is the same as moving the decimal to the right. Okay. Step 2 says to multiply the dividend by the same power of 10. Your dividend is the number that it goes inside of your division box. So that's the number that you're dividing. Okay, this is the same as moving the decimal to the right as well. So whenever you multiply by a power of 10, you're moving your decimal to the right. Okay. Step 3 is to divide like normal. Step 4 would be to bring the decimal directly above the quotient. So your quotient in your division problem is your answer, right? Now you must remember that whatever you do to the divisor, you must also do to the dividend. So whatever you do to the number outside of your division box, you must also do to the number inside of your division box, to your dividend. Okay, let's go ahead and practice rewriting the division problem to make the divisor a whole number, so your number outside of your division box a whole number, by multiplying by a power of 10, and don't solve. So if we're looking at number 1, 1.2 is my divisor, okay? That's the number that's outside of my division box. I'm going to multiply it by a power of 10 in order to make it a whole number. So that means I'm just going to move my decimal over one time, okay? Making this now 12. Now, whatever I do to my divisor, I must also do to my dividend, this number right here, the number that I'm dividing. So if I multiplied 86.3 by 10, I would be moving my decimal over one place to the right, making this now 863. Then you would be able to divide like normal, okay? So remember, you can never have a decimal in your divisor, in the number outside of your division box. You have to move it by multiplying by a power of 10. Okay, so let's keep going. Looking at number 2, I've got 0.25 as my divisor, my number outside of my division box. Okay, and I can't have that decimal there. I can only divide by a whole number. So I need to multiply my 0.25 by 100. That 100 is a power of 10. So I'm going to be moving my decimal over once, twice, making that 25. Okay, so I multiplied it by a power of 10 twice. 10 times 10 is 100. So I multiplied it by 100 to make 0.25, 25. Now, whatever I do to my divisor, I also have to do to my dividend, the number inside of my division box. So if I have 740 and I multiply this number by 100, by a power of 10, then I am now going to make that 74,000. And now I can divide 74,000 by 25, okay? Over here, looking at number 3, I have 41 as my divisor. There's no decimal there, so I can just rewrite it as 41 and then rewrite my dividend as 1525.2, okay? And then my decimal is going to stay the same, so that's going to come up into my quotient as well. Okay, so if I don't do anything to my divisor, then I don't have to do anything to my dividend. Since 41 didn't change, I did not have to move the decimal in my dividend. All right, let's go ahead and actually solve these problems down here. We're going to start with number 1. Our directions say to divide the following numbers. Be sure to remove any decimals in the divisor by multiplying by a power of 10. Okay, so if I have 210 divided by 3.5, 210 is going to be my dividend. Okay, it's going to be, if it's my first number in my problem, it's going to go inside of my division box. That's my dividend. Because we're saying that 210 is going to be divided by 3.5, okay, which is my divisor. So I have a decimal in my divisor, which I'm not allowed to have. So that means I need to multiply it by a power of 10. So I need to move my decimal over one place to make that 35, okay? And because I did that, that means I also need to move my decimal over in my dividend, making this 2,100, okay? Now I am going to solve the problem. So let me go ahead and erase this really quick here. I have 35 as my divisor, and I have 2,100 as my dividend, and now I can divide like normal. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out how many times 35 can go into 2,100. Okay, so if I take 35 and I ask myself, can 35 go into 2? It obviously cannot, because 2 is smaller than 35. I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 up here, showing that 35 cannot go into 2. Then I'm going to move on to 21, right? So the next number, I'm going to see if 35 can go into 21, which it can't because 21 is still smaller than 35. So I'm going to put another 0 up top in my quotient. Okay. Now I'm going to ask myself if 35 can go into 210. Surely it can. Let's see if maybe multiplying it by 5 will get us what we want. So let's take 35 over here, multiplied by 5. I know 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 3 is 15, plus my 2 would give me 17. That's 175. I'm thinking that I could probably get a little bit closer to 210. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this and try again. I'm going to do 35 times 6 this time. (35 times 6). I know 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 3 would get me 21. That's perfect. So 35 goes into 210 6 times, evenly, with nothing left over. And then if I drop down my 0, I've got 35 going into 0, 0 times, and my quotient would be 60. Okay? So if I took 210 and divided it by 3.5, my answer would be 60, because I would have to first multiply 3.5 by a power of 10, making it 35. And I would also have to multiply 210 by a power of 10, making it 2,100. Okay? I'm going to do one more with y'all. Looking at question number 5. Okay, same thing. I've got 856.8. 856.8 divided by 8.4. Okay, now I cannot have a decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to multiply it by a power of 10 and move that over to make it 84. Whatever I do to my divisor, I also have to do to my dividend, so I need to move my decimal over by multiplying that number by a power of 10 as well. And now we're going to figure out how many times 84 goes into 8. It does not, because 8 is smaller than 84. So I'm going to put a 0 up here. Now I'm going to ask myself how many times 84 goes into 85, which is once. Oops. This needs to be 84. Okay, 85 minus 84 gives me 1. Then I'm going to drop down my 6. Now I'm going to ask myself how many times 84 goes into 16. It doesn't. It goes in 0 times. Okay. 16 minus 0 is 16. I'm going to drop down my 8. And now I'm going to ask myself how many times 84 goes into 168. I'm going to go ahead and bet that it's twice. 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 8 is 16. Perfectly goes in twice, giving me a quotient of 102. Okay, so again, I took my 8.4, I multiplied it by a power of 10. Then I also took my 856.8, my dividend, multiplied it by a power of 10, and was able to divide 8,568 by 84, giving me 102. Now go ahead and solve question number 6 on your own.